Rocket ship, go now. Hello, I am Robert Oldley, Executive Strategist and EQ Coach. Glad you guys could join me for yet another video. So this is the first in a series of videos, which are one, good remakes of actually some topics I hit on a number of years ago that I wanted to redo. But more importantly, I want to be able to condense a lot of great material so that you guys don't have to go through long, painful, and expensive learning in other inefficient places. So today's 10-minute MBA primer, innovation management. And what does it boil down to? Building great products and operating by iterative processes. Okay, so let's dig into it. You may have heard me mention in other videos, what's the difference between strategic management, innovation management, and change management. So that's the domain that we're in now. We're dealing with innovation management. We want to do something new and amazing, and why would we do that? The basic driver of it is that we want to build some great new product. There's a lot of strat reasons why that would happen, but high level, the way I would boil that down is that there is some new way that you're trying to add value to some target market, and that should mean that you're creating some new higher margin option. And again, it's the spectrum of how few clients paying quite a bit, or what volume of clients can you hit at a good margin. And if there's a good tech driver, that should mean that there's some efficiency reason, there's some new intelligence which makes it more potent, scalable, lets you access new markets, right? Yeah, so that's it. Normally, when we think of innovation management, it has the startup end of things, which is a little bit closer to a set product. And then as we become more about the nature of how we're operating, we try to scale that to larger organizations. It tends to focus more on the process of how we do it. There's a certain mindset, right? IDEO had to go through the same thing. It was teaching people about creativity and this kind of physical product design, and then it became so intangible and multi-sectorial of what it could do. It had to kind of generalize that into a set of processes it could teach to any organization, right? So this is very much it. Um, Let me recap just the market need behind this. Markets go through this trend that we sometimes call this S curve, right? And the point being, so in the four stages of the market, in the first one, it's like the need is still growing, the market really isn't there, and people are frankly still being educated that this thing even freaking exists, right? This is, I guess, part of the annoying part of a blue ocean or a new emerging market, right? That you have to inform people that there's this amazing new thing, and it takes a lot of effort, right? This is part of that, books like Zero to One, because they're saying, how much effort it takes to, somewhere between personally get your first batch of clients, but also inform the market that this is possible, right? It's in the second and third stage, which you can, the size of the market is growing, but also more importantly, the margin, how much you can make is growing. But by the third stage, there's so much competition that margins are already starting to shrink and things are consolidating, right? So, by the third stage, you've already missed your big business opportunity and things are shrinking. And then by the fourth stage, it's very cheap and efficient and commodified, right? Each has their own kind of business model they can succeed at, but the way you succeed is very different, right? So innovation management tends to be around, I want to make some amazing new thing, which is going to succeed in the first or second stage of this market, and I'll be able to catch a tiger by the tail. Particularly if you look at strategies like, what is it? Not Blitzkrieg, but the it's like a you need big injections of market equity, of market capital to help you capture a lot of market share. But the idea being, hopefully, if you not only have all the market share, but hopefully, if you have some big, what they would call moats, defensibility around that, it's very hard for someone to take away from that, right? So I think like Reed Hastings and a bunch of other people uh, are, or at least would have been in that camp, right? I actually think that era of kind of war chest that you can create this amazing product and just capture market share and no one else can take it. I think that's kind of dying. I think there's not just less loyalty, but products are easier to reverse engineer than ever. So the notion that you're going to be the only one doing it and you're going to, mystically never lose market share is a bit diluted. Okay. Anyway, there's a bunch of other things need to get into here, so I'll just dig into it. Okay. Product development, product management. Okay, so there's a couple concepts here, MVP and the pivot. Okay, so we have this notion called product market fit. And what does that mean? That means we have a product that's built to, serve as the solution for a particular market problem, right? So as much as you need to know both of these, probably you're more of an expert, and you could think as you yourself or your team, more of an expert on one or the other, right? So what this tends to look like is if you're more on the kind of nerdy researcher engineer end of things, there is some cool solution you can make. You just really don't know who it helps yet. And so When you're pivoting on that end of things, the product is kind of static, the solution is kind of static, but you're like, do you like it? Do you like it? Do you like it? Like, who will pay me the most money for this thing I made, this cool thing I made, right? And so the advantage of that is that you probably do have some cool new super weapon. The bad thing is it's not really a super weapon until it adds value to someone. It's really a solution in search of a problem. Now the opposite is true if you're very close to the market end of things. If there's a certain thing you're trying to build a solution for, if there's a target market that you know well that you're intimately part of, you know how to evaluate what a solution would look like, but you don't have anything new and amazing that would act as a solution, right? So what you're trying to sift through is what's new and amazing. One example here would be the camelback, this water bladder on your back. That came out of mountain bikers, and they were trying to use like physical canteens, but they needed both their hands, and so they figured out this like movable straw thing, and then eventually that becomes camelbacks, right? And super useful. And you can see like the ergonomics of that, right? Like this is definitely necessity is the mother of invention. It's like, well, I need water, but I need water hands free, and it can't be too intrusive, and it can't be too heavy, etc. Right? So they do that. Ultimately, you want both of those to happen. This also brings us to another concept, which is MVP, minimum viable product. Um, the uh, the process part of a lot of this is you could say agile, but I'm going to even boil it down more simply than that. I would say iterative work bursts. The idea being it's not about spending many weeks and months and years building expensively building, time consumingly building this thing. It's about working in short bursts and getting feedback as soon as possible. So when we're saying MVP, what we mean is the minimum thing that works, and more importantly, that you could sell and start to make money for. Now, here's actually the thing. There's lots of companies that make products that work okay, and they can start selling before they're really doing it incredibly well. Microsoft has actually been notorious for this in the past. It's almost like they're selling stuff. It's like in the beta stage. It's like, well, listen, if you that much of a brand that people are going to pay you for it, good job. But then they can go on to approve it and make great products. Even example now, Slack is fantastic and everyone knows it, but in the span of a few years, Microsoft Teams has actually been doing pretty good. I still don't think it's my favorite tool, but it's as a Slack killer, it's right up there, right? So they were able to learn their lessons well. So even this notion of an MVP can even kind of work at an enterprise level. It's just that everything is scaled up to that strata. Okay, so why do we want to work in these quick bursts? It conserves our resources. There is something intentionally in terms of getting the more productivity per person out of it when you're working in these small, brief goals that you can be very specific about. And it tries to optimize things for learning, particularly I would say customer-centric learning. I built this thing. What do you think of it so far? What do you think of it so far? And then learning of the team. How are we working? How do we improve? That's the process side of really what innovation management is about. And so the people that I would say are really into agile, good agile coaches, yes, they can teach you how to work in these short work bursts, but really it's like you're learning how to learn and you're becoming much more better as a team about how to manage not just your productivity, but how you're adapting and changing together and bit by bit getting better and better work processes. And that's beautiful. Um, eh, just a few other points about innovation management. One of the overall kind of problems here is that like I really view like creativity and new solutions as this quality through quantity issue, right? It's not that every idea is great, but it's by having more volume of ideas you will find the great ones. And then the next step is learning how to collaborate and interact and bring those together well. So often it feels like we're trying to kind of catch that lightning in a bottle when it does strike, and that's part of the value of why things like Startup Weekend or different hackathons are so useful, right? If you randomly pick someone and audit them and started kind of brainstorming, you might not be that useful. But if someone's been incubating on this for some time and they meet the right other people that resonate with that, that's awesome. The other advantage of this is that people tend to self-select and opt into these teams. So there might be a startup weekend with 60, 80, 100 people. You pitch this idea, and before you know it, you got 6, 8, 10 people that are really jazzed about that idea too, right? And it might only be 5 or 10% of the people that's there, but it's the right 5 or 10% that could actually be allies that find this compelling, right? That's actually really important in innovation management, and that's part of how you're trying to catch something useful and then iterate it into something that actually can become a good solution. As quickly as possible in 30 seconds, I'm going to try to recap how this fits in at the enterprise level. At the enterprise level, it's actually really hard to innovate. It's very costly. They're not good at new ideas. There's no such thing as free labor or scrappily doing this or that. And so, it's not just the resources are overbaked, but it's like culturally they're super risk averse, so they're not good at it. That's why they get very interested in acquisitions, right? And so they start acquiring things by figuring out just product wise and market wise, where these are the areas we're going after, and we want to eat up the best solutions that do that, right? So if enterprise can do their job well, they can find growing tech startups, growing products that fit their need and say, great, you guys did that better than I did. I don't want to die a death of a thousand cuts. I'm going to eat you, and now your strengths are mine. That's all I have time for today. I will catch you guys next time. Didn't let